Hey guys, welcome to Blue Ridge Online. My name is Josh, this is Cammie, and we are the service hosts today. So we have signs all around our buildings that ask, what are the dreams and visions that God has put in your heart? So let's dive right into what does that mean and what does it not mean?
That could mean so many different things. When you think about dreams or visions, as it relates to your personal walk with Christ, as it relates to your family, as it relates to like the dreams and goals you have in your profession or in your marriage. And those are all important and very good. But when this question is posed very purposely, what are the dreams and visions that God has given you as it lines up within the context of where he is leading us as a church body forward?
Let's be hypothetical and let's say how, I want my brother to come to Christ, or I want my sister to come to Christ. So my dream is that they will come to Christ. And that's my vision. Is that correct?
That is correct as a dream or a vision, but not in the context of what we are collectively asking together. So when you think about making disciples, sharing the gospel, for some of us, that's God calling you to your family. But when you're thinking about, as Blue Ridge, having our form look different as opposed to coming here every Sunday, sitting down as a family, watching online every Sunday, that's not bad, but what impact is that having on the kingdom? Okay. And so instead of putting our focused attention on attending church on a Sunday, our focused attention has to be on sharing the gospel throughout the week in the spaces where we live.
Okay, so it's a little bit more about form.
Yes.
And so instead of saying my dream is that my sibling comes to Christ, it's my dream is that I will help him come to Christ somehow. And then the dream that we're really looking for, the dream and the vision, is about what is that thing that you're going to try and do or facilitate to help bring him to Christ.
Yes.
So that's the kind of thing that we're looking for.
Yes. And something that we've talked about is taking the gospel into environments where the gospel is not going to organically become a part of the conversation. And then asking God, what does he want you to do then in that environment? Like, what responsibility do we now have in that environment to show people who Jesus is, to help them understand that? And then if they choose to walk toward that, how do you live that? And so I've been processing this and I don't know yet. And that's okay. If you don't know yet, that is okay. Even this morning while I was brushing my teeth, I was alone because my kids had been on the bus finally, and I was just alone for the first time this morning.
Finally.
And as I was brushing my teeth, I found my mind going to that place again where I was like, God, what are the dreams and visions? What do you have for me right now? Where do you have me living this intentional way?
For me, it's been similar. It has been less about how can I do something, or a little bit less about that, and it's actually been as I'm in public environments, it's like, how can you help me see people differently? And have a heart that breaks for the lost people. And so for me, it's starting a similar question, but a little bit from a different perspective. What are the dreams and visions God has put in your heart? That's the question. That's a little bit of what we're asking. So I'm excited because today we're diving into this topic. What are the dreams and about dreams and visions? And maybe you don't have a specific dream or vision. Kind of like us both right now.
We're getting there.
And so there's another question that you can ask that Jeremy is going to unpack today. So let's join him in the studio.
weeks ago, we began this new series called The Land Between, where we're looking at Israelites' journey out of the land of Egypt to a new place that God had promised them. But between where they are currently, as pictured here on this map in the lower left-hand corner in the land of Egypt, and to the new place that God is taking them up in this upper right-hand corner, is what? It's desert. It's this land between, a land they must pass through to get from where they are to where God is inviting them to go. But the interesting thing about this land between, while it is desert and it will be hard, it's not just meant to be something that they need to endure, but it has a purpose. That in fact, God uses the land between and the things that they will face there to help equip, prepare, and refine the people so that as we've seen in the first 2 weeks of this series, as we've looked at Deuteronomy 8, it would go well for them when they arrive in the place that God is leading them. You see, what we've seen is God takes us through this land between for our own good. And so, we have been and will continue to zoom into specific points along Israel's journey through this land between. Because like Israel, we believe God is inviting us to leave where we've been, what we've known over the last few decades as a church. And as much as God has used who we have been as a church to affect and change lives, we believe that there are more creative, fresh, and new ways in which God is inviting us to be the church to reach newer and newer generations with the good news of Jesus. But all of this will require us, like Israel, to leave what we've known and where we've been to take a journey to a new place with him. And while we don't know exactly yet where that new place will be or what it will look like, we believe this place that God is inviting us to go with him will largely be built on the God-given dreams and visions of the whole of the church, rather than just a few select leaders like myself. But before we get to this new place with God, that God is leading us, he's going to take us through the land between. Why? We've said it to help equip, prepare, and refine us so that when we enter into the land he is leading us towards, it will go well with us. So each week, we've been zooming into very specific places along Israel's journey to see what lessons that we can glean from Israel's time in the land between. Now, for the last few weeks, we've kept on mentioning this whole idea of dreams and visions, and we'll probably continue that. Because we, like I've already said, we firmly believe that our future as a church will be largely built on the God-given dreams and visions that God births inside of us as the whole, rather than just a few. But I wonder, as we talk about this, does it sound a bit overwhelming to you? I'd have to admit it actually does to me. In my position, how do we help manage all this? How do we sort through everything that people feel like God is leading them towards? How do we help equip people so that they can fully realize the dreams and the visions that God has for them? I wonder, how many of us would just rather be told exactly what to do, where we're going, and exactly what part we can play in helping? I wonder if this whole idea of our future as a church, maybe being built off of a dream or a vision that God may give you, does that produce in you some sort of insecurity or maybe a lot of questions? Questions like, what if God doesn't give me a dream? What if I don't feel like coming up with something else to add to everything else already going on in my life? Will God be displeased with me? How will I know if a dream or a vision is actually from God versus from someone or something else? If I'm new to following Jesus, shouldn't I have to have some more experiences in following him before I receive some sort of dream and vision from him? Or maybe you're just saying, I've never had God speak to me in that way. Honestly, guys, in my journey with Jesus, I've been more of a hindsight 2020 kind of guy. Meaning when I look back at my life, I can see the dreams and visions that God placed in my mind and my heart that in the moment I didn't recognize as dreams and visions. So if we keep on saying our future as a church will be built off the dreams and the visions of the whole of the church, how will that work if there's a lot of people like me? Well, today, I want us to focus in on a moment in Israel's time in this land between, that while it won't answer all of those questions I just asked, it is another piece to this journey, something I believe can give many of us some very practical next steps along this journey to this new place God is taking us as we join with him in this land between. So would you pray with me? Jesus, I know that I have lots of questions. I know I wish, I'm a control freak. I want to know where we're going. I want to be able to define things and set parameters and make myself comfortable, but that's just not what journeying through this land between, or really in life in any stage with you, looks like. And so Jesus, I just pray that we would each hold open our hands if we identify as a follower of you, and we would be open to the uncertainty but the security of the one that we follow in this land between. It's in your name we pray, Jesus. Amen. So, if you have a Bible, would you open up to Exodus chapter 17? We're picking up this account where Israel is now fully in this land between. This is a couple weeks after they've crossed the Red Sea, that moment where God split the sea in two and allowed them to cross over on dry land. And now, they find themselves in the middle of the desert, and not just exposed to the harsh elements of desert life, but they find themselves vulnerable to the attacking forces of other nomadic tribal groups. Why? Because they're no longer protected by the physical might of the Egyptian army. And so we begin to read in Exodus chapter 17, verse 8. It says this: the Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. Now I'm going to pause here quickly. Several things here I want to say. First, remember, they've been slaves in Egypt for generations at this point. And as slaves, their enslavers, for very practical and obvious reasons, most likely wouldn't have equipped them or given them the opportunity or training needed, right, to fight a battle. Like, that just makes sense that they wouldn't have done that. So now here's a scene. There are hundreds of thousands of people in an unfamiliar land with little to no fighting experience, facing the threat of an attacking force. We continue reading verse 9. So Moses said to Joshua, choose some of our own men and go out and fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow, I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hands. So Moses sends Joshua, who was at the time Moses' right-hand kind of man. And in fact, later, after Moses' death, Joshua would be the one to lead all of Israel. Moses sends Joshua to go and literally create overnight Israel's first military. But Moses makes it very clear that he isn't going to be joining them on the battlefield the next day. But he's going to go up on a hill that overlooks this battle. But in his hands will be the staff of God. Now, this staff of God is an important thing. As you may or may not know, this staff has been a symbol of God's authority, his presence and power with Moses from the moment God invited him on this journey to lead the people out of Egypt. You see, when God first called Moses to go to Pharaoh and demand that he let the Israelite people go, Moses had some very practical questions. Questions like, what if the leaders or this Pharaoh, they don't believe that you sent me? And so, like many of you may or may not know, we may remember that God tells Moses to throw that staff in his hands down on the ground, and instantly it became a snake. Now, that same staff is the one that God tells Moses to hold over the Red Sea and that God uses to split the sea in two so that the people of Israel can walk over on dry land, escaping the Egyptian army. And again, when the people are in the desert with no water, God commands Moses to go and hit a rock with this staff, and water comes flowing out from this rock. See, this staff isn't just a shepherd's staff, but it's a symbol, time and time again, of God's authority, his presence, his protection, his power with Moses and over all the people of Israel. So this is no insignificant gesture that in the first battle they will face with a group of men who most likely have never been trained for military service, that Moses will go up on a hill with this staff of God in his hands. But in his hands to do what? Let's keep on reading. Verse 10. So Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered, and Moses and Aaron and Hur went up on top of the hill. As long as Moses held his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. So Joshua's out on the battlefield now, and Moses, along with his older brother Aaron and another companion named Hur, are up on this hillside overlooking the battle. Now, as long as Moses can keep his hands up in the air, which are holding this staff of God's, they're winning the battle. But as soon as he starts to get tired and his arms start to sink, the Amalekites, they start to win. And so there's literally this back and forth happening. We read verse 12. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him, both Aaron and Hur, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held up his hands, one on one side and one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. So Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, write this on a scroll. Moses, this is so important. Write this on a scroll as something to be remembered, and make sure that Joshua hears it, because I will completely blot out the name of Amalek from under heaven. This is one of my favorite accounts in the land between. See, Moses and his staff become a picture for us of a person empowered by God's Spirit with some sort of dream or vision. And I firmly believe that as we continue asking God collectively to bring and to birth in us these dreams and visions of new and creative and fresh ways to be the church towards the people around us, like we began to do a few weeks ago with our collective day of fasting and prayer, I firmly believe as we continue to do this, he will answer those prayers. In fact, I've already been in multiple conversations with Blue Ridgers, where it's been clear that God is beginning to birth something in them, that he's handing them a staff, if you will, a picture of his power, his presence with them through this dream and vision he's giving them. In fact, in the coming weeks and months, we're going to be sharing with you regularly some of these God-given dreams and visions that he's giving people. Some of these have been in process for several years, and others will be brand new. But I'm confident that as we continue on this journey, God is going to equip more and more of us with our own staffs, our own dreams and visions, empowered by God to change and affect change in the lives of people around us. But as confident as I am of that, I'm also sure it won't be all of us at one time. We all just can't go off running in different directions. That would cause a bunch of chaos, and I doubt it would end up accomplishing much. But that doesn't mean those of us who haven't yet been given a dream or a vision just sit back and do nothing. Quite the opposite. In fact, see, what I love in this account of Israel's first battle, while Aaron and Hur aren't the ones holding the staff that's been empowered by God, there's still some very significant and practical roles for them to play. I mean, imagine with me for a moment, if Aaron and Hur hadn't followed Moses up on that hillside, that because they weren't personally given this empowered staff from God, what if they just sat back at the camp? Think how differently the outcome would have been. There's no way that Moses could have stood there all day alone holding that staff in the air. And if he wasn't able to hold that staff, then Joshua and his inexperienced group of fighters would have been defeated. And there would have been a huge loss of life that day. And Israel's already very tenuous emotional state in this land between would have been run into a ditch. It would have been devastating. You see, I believe for every staff that gets handed out by God, every dream and vision given by his Spirit to a follower of Jesus's, there are the Aarons, the Hurs, the Joshuas, the fighting men, all of them playing a pivotal part in the movement of God there in the desert of Rephidim. You see, I believe there are two prayers that all of us who identify ourselves as followers of Jesus should be praying in this season. The first one is, God, what is a dream and a vision that you have for me? Metaphorically speaking, what is that staff you want me to hold up in the air This thing that's been empowered by you, that's not of me, that will affect change in the lives of people around me. But the second question, I believe, is just as important, that we should be asking along with the first. That is, who around me is currently holding a staff that I can help support? Another way of asking this would be, where do I already see God at work? And God, how would you like me to join? Who are you already working through? Maybe it's not just a person, but it's an organization you see holding a staff in the air. And while we may not have a dream and a vision yet, there are people who God is already empowering with something from him, but they were never meant to carry that load alone. So how would you and I identify someone around you who, through God's Spirit, has been given a dream or a vision? Just a couple quick things here as we start this conversation. You see, first, you want to look for evidence of God's empowerment, i.e., lives are already being changed because of what you see God doing through them. Second, you see observable integrity. They're living out what they're inviting others to join them in. Metaphorically speaking, they're already there on that hillside holding that staff in the air. Thirdly, you sense humility. Be wary of a person or an organization with big dreams and visions that seem to have all the answers. Even in this account, Moses was the one that God empowered his staff. And we've already seen God use this staff and Moses in amazing ways. But Moses understands and sees his need for the Aaron and the Hurs around him. You see, who is God already working through that's around you and around me? Who's already holding a staff up in the air? You see, while we wait on God to give us our own dream, to birth in us a vision from him, what if we began to ask that second question? God, who or where are you already at work? And we started to join him there. Guys, this has been mine and Woody's dynamic over the last season. You see, if you've been at Blue Ridge for any amount of time, you've seen a shift between both mine and Woody's roles. From the amount of time that Woody used to teach to Woody going to lead the Bedford campus a couple of years ago. But one of the things, even as our roles continue to transition, one of the things I am very aware of is Woody's apostolic gifting that God has empowered him with. What do I mean, apostolic gifting? It's not something we use a lot, right? That's not a familiar phrase. I simply mean a person who has been given the ability by God's Holy Spirit to pioneer God's mission in new ways into new places. This is what God used through Woody to give birth to Blue Ridge Community Church originally. There was this dissatisfaction with the state of the church in the late 80s and early 90s. And if you've been around Blue Ridge for any amount of time, you've heard Woody talk about this. In fact, there's been a bumper we've used for years now, or for the last few years, where Woody is referencing this dissatisfaction. And through this, God would use Woody to pioneer this new way of doing church in this area that nobody at the time was doing. And I would say it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago when I started hearing a similar stirring inside of Woody once again. That as grateful as he was for how God had used this way of being the church throughout the years, as many lives as we've seen been changed by how God has used Blue Ridge throughout the years, he was starting to sense that change was coming. And as he shifted out to Bedford a couple of years ago to kind of be the interim campus pastor out there, he started to experiment with different ways of leading and empowering people. Woody started to started looking for people who were dreaming dreams and having visions of reaching people in new ways. And I've seen Woody's humility along the way, knowing that he didn't have all the answers, giving others like myself the time we needed to see and to process what he was already sensing. I've watched his integrity of living out what he was inviting other people to join him in. And I see the stories of people starting to surface, people who are being changed by God through the dream that God invited Woody to stand on that hillside and lift up years ago. So what you see me doing here what I get to do with leaders and the staff here at Blue Ridge as I have been taking them along on this journey, this series, The Land Between. All of this is me playing that role of Aaron and Hur. See, this dream and vision of becoming a place where the dreams and visions of the whole are informing who we're becoming in the future, that didn't originate with me. I saw Woody holding up that staff years ago. This is me pushing that rock under him so that he can rest. This is me getting the privilege of playing the role of Aaron and Hur by holding up one of his arms. So, what do we do next? Well, we need to make some intentional space to ask God. Not just for our own dream and vision, but to identify who around us God may be asking us to hold their arms up. So what would something intentional look like? Well, I can't tell you exactly what you should do, but this is what intentionalities look like for me recently. You see, each Wednesday, I've been meeting with a small group of people, and our whole purpose of meeting is to pray that God would birth in us some God-given dreams and visions. But the meeting is just a small part. You see, every Wednesday leading up to the meeting that evening, we're fasting from food and we're praying throughout the day, from sunrise to sunset. Now, this is not to prove anything to God, only to make space in our day, to be intentional with our times, to bring focus to those 12 or so hours leading up to that evening, so that when we would normally eat, when we feel those hunger pains, we can leverage that time and that space and those feelings intentionally with our prayers. What if you were to set a day a week? What if you were to invite some other people to join you, to do some sort of fast regularly? And what if during that time, you weren't just praying for your own dreams and visions, but for God to show you who he's already working through that, so while you wait, you can help support what God might already be doing through someone else. You see, I'm convinced that if we can become a church of Moseses and Aarons and Hurs and Joshuas, if we can become a church of staff raisers, stone movers, arm holders, battle fighters, we will get a front row seat to watch God move in more and more powerful ways, that God will use the time we spend holding up one another's arms of the Moseses around us to prepare and equip us. I believe we will get to sit on a hillside and watch God transform our neighbors, our coworkers, our family, our friends, new generations with the gospel. Whose arms in this coming season is God inviting you to hold? Love you guys. Can't wait to be with you again. Have a good week.
Guys, that is so good. And it makes me want to get on my feet and get excited.
I know.
Right?
I want a live band behind that,
Yes.
that last part, because I am excited. I'm excited about the vision for Blue Ridge. I see that vision standing on the hillside and watching God change the community, change the people that I love, that
Yes.
you love, that we love, and
Yes.
just front row seat to see the hand of God working.
Yes, and that visual, I like to think of the perspective of them up on top of the mountain,
Yep.
Moses and Aaron and Hur, and looking down and seeing what happens just from when his arms went down.
Yep.
To see like the complete difference in the like.
You can
No pressure.
Wait a second. Raise that back up.
Put your arms back up.
And they start winning.
Good, yes. And so we ask you again, what are the dreams and visions that God has placed in your heart?
And then the second question is, if you don't have a dream yet or a vision yet, who are those around you that you can help support? You can help them keep the staff in the air.
Yeah,
And,
whose arms can you be holding
Yep.
up? I'm excited to hear the God stories as people are like really leaning into this. It's gonna be cool.
Yep, there are great things to come.
Yep.
And so,
And as always, we hope you guys will join us next week. You can subscribe so that you will have a reminder when we are going to be going live next Sunday morning. And then you guys can watch this service throughout the week, and we will see you later.